It's Wednesday, Parshas Bamidbar Chuv Vuv Iyah Tufshim Pai Vuv. My name is Gershy Schwarcz, and I'm here with the news of the last 24 hours. And today is May 13th, 2026.
Your daily report of the news of the last 24 hours, powered by Yiddish24, provided to you by The Click.
Alright, Ha-yoim Eichot Varbuim Yoim Shahaim Chamisha Shuviyas V'shishu Yomim Lu'oim The Yesod Shabi Yesod while it still lasts. Guess what? How do I know this? Because I actually have the bot. It's called Click 613. Best thing ever. You should check it out. Click 613 is available if you go to 848-480-8677. That's Click 613. It's a great bot. Tells you minyonim and restaurants, zmanim, and anything you really want to use. So you could just check it out for yourself. It's great. It's like an AI, knows all the details, all the information that you need anywhere in the world. Trump just landed in Beijing with 17 CEOs. Elon Musk, Tim Apple, like he calls him, Tim Apple, and Maduro. I'm kidding. Marco Rubio dressed like Maduro in a Nike tracksuit. We'll talk about it soon. The Iran war has now cost America $29 billion and counting. Netanyahu was secretly in the UAE during the war, and today we found out why. The biggest crack in his coalition just opened in Bnei Brak. Iran's most famous human rights lawyer walked out of jail. Well, she was very, very sick, obviously. King Charles delivered the speech of the century in London, in the palace, and I am wondering who played it better, King Charles III or myself as King Henry V. If you've watched the SHACHMAT play, available in English and in Yiddish, on Epic and Mostly Music, you would know what I'm talking about. The Senate is voting right now, or voted already, on a new Federal Reserve chairman who was basically voted in. And a listener wants to know, how does Israel's, not Iron Dome, the Laser Dome, the new Laser Dome weapon work? We will explain this at the end, so stay with us. All right, today we want to talk about Ring and Go, and why Ring and Go is there for you when you need to ring and go. You need a device. You need a kosher device. You need to set yourself up with service, text, calls, and all that. You need a camera. You want to buy headphones, an SD card. All that and more. Wonderful and the most trusted place to go to. Why would you go to Amazon when you can trust someone, a human being? And guess what? They're better than Prime because they deliver it the next day, the same very day in Borough Park. But if you order it today, 347, okay, the number is 347-480-7455, or you can go to ringandgo.us and you'll get free delivery. And if you mention On Edge, you get 10% off. I'm going to mention it again. Scan the barcode below. WhatsApp them, text them, call them. Again, the number is 347-480-7455. ringandgo.us. President Trump just landed in Beijing. He stepped off Air Force One a few hours ago for what people are calling the biggest summit in years, a face-to-face with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Walking off the plane with Trump were Elon Musk, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, and that's a rare moment of America's top political and tech leadership stepping onto Chinese soil at the same time. That's a show of force, not just a summit. The trip comes at the worst possible moment for America. The United States is in a big war right now, as you know, with Iran. And that war is weakening Trump's hand at the table, some negative people say. One analyst, obviously an opposition kind of analyst, said that she feels he has already, quote, solved Trump. Xi Jinping knows Trump needs this meeting more than he does. That's what they think. China holds the cards. That's what they think. They control rare earth minerals, the special metals needed to build computers, missiles, and electric cars. Don't you forget that America made already a deal with Ukraine about that, and they're also exploring other options, so they don't really rely on China anymore. But China thinks they have the upper hand. They think they can squeeze Trump on those anytime they want, and Chinese exporters are actually more worried about the Iranian war than about Trump's tariffs. Trump brought 17 top American CEOs with him on the plane. He called the group, in his words, an incredible gathering of the world's greatest businessmen and women. Now that list includes, obviously, Elon Musk, Apple's Tim Cook, who Trump still calls him Tim Apple, Larry Fink, Stephen Schwartzman, Boeing's Kelly Ortberg, and an executive identified only as Brian. NVIDIA's Jensen Huang was added to the list very last minute, obviously. There was fake reports that he wasn't invited. Trump pushed back very hard, called the reports fake news, and confirmed Huang is sitting right there on Air Force One. Trump added, in his quote, highly unlikely he would ask Huang to leave, basically. In other words, notably missing from the list the top AI executives. Interesting, besides Elon Musk. AI Artificial intelligence, as you know, the new computer technology that can think and learn and takes over most of our minds and brains, is one of the main topics Trump and Xi Jinping will discuss. Both countries see AI as a weapon, a way to make money, and a spying tool. Just last November, the American tech company Anthropic accused the Chinese government of using their AI program called Claude to spy on about 30 organizations around the world. Marco Rubio is also on their aeroplane, on Air Force One, which is actually the story on its own. China officially banned Rubio from entering their country years ago. They made a special exception just so he could come for this very trip. But the internet is more focused on his outfit than his actual job. He skipped the suit and showed up in a Nike Tech tracksuit. People are comparing him to Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Right before takeoff, Trump got into a screaming match with a reporter on the White House lawn. Now, MS Now reporter Akela Gardner pointed out that the cost of Trump's new White House ballroom has doubled from when it was first announced to $400 million now. Trump fired back at her, quote, "I doubled the size of it, you dumb person. You're not a smart person," he says. Listen to him.
I doubled the size of it, you dumb person. It's double the size. You are not a smart person. Right over here.
That's $220 million to harden the White House. In other words, $500 million for the Secret Service and $13 million for a reflecting pool makeover. That's basically the full project plus security upgrades to run basically this entire operation, to make the ballroom. Basically about $1 billion. All right. One bystander joked about it. It said, "It's not a swimming pool." Trump's mission, in his words, open up China. On the table, fentanyl, tariffs, trade, energy, AI safety, and one big ask, get China to pressure Iran into a deal. Speaking of Iran, before he left, Trump said the United States will, quote, "finish the job against Iran, peacefully or otherwise." He told reporters that stopping Iran's nuclear weapon program matters more than any economic pain it cost already Americans. "The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon," he said. Trump warned that if Iran doesn't make a deal, they will be, quote, decimated. Like he loves using that word. Remember Midnight Hammer? Adding, "We will finish the job." Iran responded by saying America must accept their, quote, rightful and definitive demands. But the picture on the ground is mixed. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy says Trump's operations have actually made Iran 2 to 3 times more powerful. American intelligence, they love doing that. American intelligence shows Iran still has access to most of its missile launch sites. That includes 30 sites along the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow stretch of water where most of the world's oil ships want to pass through, and they can't obviously right now. Iran can also move its missiles around using trucks. A 40-nation coalition led by the UK and France is working to reopen the strait, sending warships, fighter jets and surveillance planes to clear the path. Massive new reveals are coming out today about the whole secret war that ran alongside the main fight with Iran. First, Netanyahu's office just announced that during Operation Lion's Roar, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu secretly flew to the United Arab Emirates, the UAE. He met face-to-face with the UAE's president, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. Now, the Prime Minister's office says that the meeting led to, quote, "a historic breakthrough in relations between the Israelis and the United Arab Emiratinians." And that meeting set the stage for what came next. Saudi Arabia secretly bombed Iran during the war. The UAE secretly bombed Iran too. In early April, the UAE and Israel together blew up a giant Iranian chemical plant. 2 days later, another strike knocked out Iranian oil refinery offline for months. Because the UAE is now so close to America and Israel, Iran is focusing its anger heavily against them. And it's not just Netanyahu who flew to Abu Dhabi. The heads of both the Mossad and the Shin Bet, Israel's top 2 spy agencies, also secretly traveled to the UAE during the war. They sat with senior Emirati leaders to plan joint actions against Iran, including sharing intelligence and coordinating attacks on Iranian targets. There is also a report that Netanyahu privately doesn't trust the American negotiators Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. He's worried Trump will accept a limited deal with last-minute giveaways. Iran is bleeding. Under heavy American pressure, Iran hasn't exported any crude oil, that's raw oil, by sea in 28 days. Tankers are stuck at Kharg Island, where Iran ships 90% of oil. Satellite images show no ocean tankers at the terminal on May 8th, 9th, or 11th. And right now, satellite images also show a large unexplained oil slick spreading near the island. With no oil tankers there for 4 days, experts say it can be a leak from loading. Something else is going on. 2 new China-Iran moves caught the world's attention today. The New York Times reports Chinese companies are in active talks about possible weapons sales to Iran. That would be a massive escalation. China openly arming the country America is at war with? And NBC News, looking at satellite ship tracking data, found several Chinese cargo ships and oil tankers passing right through the Strait of Hormuz over the past 24 hours. That means China is moving its trade through the exact waterway America trying to keep closed. U.S. Central Command also released 4-week blockade numbers. American forces have redirected 67 commercial ships, allowed 15 humanitarian shipments, and disabled 4 ships entirely. They even fired warning shots at 2 more vessels earlier this week. But one ship broke through. A massive Chinese oil tanker called the Yanhuaoyu just forced its way through the Strait of Hormuz. The ship had been delayed for months. Today it pushed through carrying nearly 2 million barrels of Iraqi crude oil. That's a major embarrassment for the American blockade. Let's talk about URA, shall we?
Okay, laat me redden een beetje statistics. Gewinnen de lottery, de chances zijn alsof je treffen naar parking in Borrepark of Jamte. Gewinnen met URA, doe ze schon alsof je treffen naar parking in Thames River van Greenham Dienst. Ik luister van eens, freak 5-ish. 5-ish? Ja, sure. Nou, voor $5. I got fuel mortgage payments. Gedekt. Hij met de 1000 in cash. Laag, zit hier in cash. A luxury vacation. De mensen van wel goed met de prijzen voor tickets aan. Who cares? De toestig zijn is. Neem aan deel in de URA auction. URA. $5 aan prijs. URA. Ik ben nachtwist, ja, nou shit. $5 kost nou je de prijs. Noem maar dat. Oké, so 732-719-2060. Call in. Is dat gewinnen? $5 kost nou je de prijs. Ja. Oera.
Okay, now, let's talk about Kuwait. In Kuwait, on May 1st, there was a firefight. If you didn't understand the ad, by the way, because it's Yiddish, go to URA auction, and just buy yourself a ticket with $5. That's it. $5 a prize, and you can win this weekend, Mr. Shem, several hundred thousands of dollars. You never know. 6 Iranian Revolutionary Guard members, operatives, arrived on a rented fishing boat. This is an amazing story, by the way. Listen to this. They arrived on a rented fishing boat. Their goal is terror attacks on the Bubiyan Island, Kuwait's largest island. Kuwaiti forces captured 4 of them. Iran rejected the accusations. The Kuwaiti Foreign Ministry has now called the Iranian ambassador in for a meeting. The US State Department also slammed 3 Chinese satellite companies with sanctions for giving Iran pictures of American troops' positions during the war. China was also helping Iran target American soldiers. Inside Iran, the regime is openly taunting America. During a military drill in Tehran, the IRGC used small drones to practice hitting a target painted to look like an American Black Hawk helicopter, a direct mock at the Isfahan incident where real Black Hawks were destroyed. The Iranian people are paying the price. They're suffering through the longest planned internet blackout ever recorded. The government built a 2-tier system. Regime insiders get internet, the public doesn't, and people are furious. A University of Tehran student was arrested in the city of Arak. And on Monday, the regime executed a 29-year-old man named Erfan Shakruzada. They accused him of working with US intelligence and the Mossad. This is part of a massive wave of executions since the war started in late February. We're talking about thousands already. Thousands. That's besides the people they killed on the streets. And no one has seen Iran's supreme leader Mujtaba Khamenei in months. Mujtaba was appointed leader in March after his father stepped aside. We've never seen him. We've seen cardboard of him, but we haven't seen him. State media only put out written statements from him since then. The regime says he's healthy. Nobody can verify it. 2 odd snapshots from inside Iran, famous human rights lawyer Nasrin Sotoudeh was just released from jail on bail after the regime's own doctors said her health was too bad for prison, a quiet sign that the regime is folding. And President Pezeshkian found time during the chaos to wish the Iranian national soccer team good luck. Bombs falling, regime cracking, and soccer pep talks. Today, the Pentagon put a fresh number on the war. You see, these Iranian names are confusing my mind, so you can say things that just don't make sense. Anyway, the Iran war has now cost the United States $29 billion. That's already $4 billion higher than the figure they gave Congress just 2 weeks ago. Yesterday's Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, testified that Iran's defense industrial base is, quote, overwhelmingly destroyed. Senator Shaheen pushed back, obviously. She said that's not true. Iran is still building drones, she said, and the war is not yet won. On the diplomatic side, an Iranian lawmaker confirmed today that the regime is actively discussing enriching uranium to 90%. That's weapons grade, as a response if Iran is attacked again. Unbelievable. So they do have the nuclear, they don't have nuclear. And Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, flew into New Delhi today for the BRICS foreign ministers meeting. His agenda, line up diplomatic backing from Iran's non-Western friends like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The goal is to push back against American pressure and frame the war as Western aggression. Back in Washington, the Senate just rejected a bill that would have required Congress to approve any continued military action against Iran. The vote was 50-49. And to the 7th time they lost. 3 Republican senators actually crossed the aisle and voted with the Democrats to push the bill forward. Didn't work. But it wasn't enough. This is the 7th time this year senators have tried to limit President Trump's war powers on Iran. And it's 7th time they failed. An update on something we told you about yesterday. We covered how Pakistan and Afghanistan have been quietly sheltering Iran aircraft. Today, Trump publicly praised Pakistan as a great peace mediator. Pakistan's officially denied the aircraft sheltering report, and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham broke openly with Trump. He said he does not trust Pakistan, quote, even one bit. Speaking of Gulf alliances, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia signed a mutual defense pact last year that's being called the Islamic NATO. In other words, now Pakistan's defense minister says Qatar and Turkey are expected to officially join very, very soon. It's like a type of NATO, an alliance where they defend each other. Trump also took a shot at NATO, the actual NATO, the European one, calling the alliance, quote, very disappointing and unnecessary. He's angry at them. Now they're waking up after he called them. And Spain and other countries alike are basically pushing back against his efforts to try and obviously solve the issues with the Iranian war. Late at night, Trump posted on social media about the war. He claimed Iran's air force is gone, destroyed, decimated. He claimed all 159 of their Navy ships are at the bottom of the sea. He attacked the media reports about Iran fighting well, calling them, quote, virtual treason that helps the enemy. The European Union has also extended its flight warning for Israel until May 27th, citing rapidly worsening conditions. So they can't obviously, cancelling flights. Heavy fighting continues in Lebanon. Yesterday, Israeli strikes killed 13 people, including 2 paramedics in Nabatiyah, who died during a rescue mission. We're talking about those other people, the Hezbollah terrorists, obviously. Over the past 24 hours, the IDF eliminated about 15 terrorist operatives, including the deputy commander of Hezbollah's elite Radwan force last week. Talks between Lebanon and Israel are scheduled for tomorrow, Thursday, at 4 o'clock Israel time. They'll run until midnight and pick up again Friday. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates is hitting Hezbollah where it hurts the wallets. UAE placed 16 people and 5 organizations on a terror watch list. That includes Al-Kurd, Al-Hassan, Hezbollah's main financial network. They ordered a 24-hour asset freeze, like a sanction almost. And good news for travelers. Lufthansa, Austrian Airlines, and Wizz Air all announced that they're returning to their normal schedule with Israel in the next month. In Gaza, the IDF just released a striking photograph. Last Wednesday, the Israeli Air Force killed the commander in Hamas's Sheyeja battalion in northern Gaza. A photo released today shows him inside a protected shelter at the Nahal Oz outpost in October 7th itself. That means he was one of the Hamas's terrorists who infiltrated Israel the day that the massacre happened and helped murder and kidnap IDF soldiers at the same time. The same strike also killed the second Hamas Nukba terrorist, who recently held a key role inside the actual Hamas organization. Now we move to major political news out of Israel. The Degel HaTorah party is officially pulling its support from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition. Yesterday, the 4 Knesset members from the Haredi party traveled to Bnei Brak. They went to the home of the Tzaddik, the Slabodka Rosh Hashiva, the Guan Reb Dov Lando Shlita. The Rosh Hashiva told him clearly, stop supporting Netanyahu immediately and do whatever is best for the Haredi Yidden and the yeshiva students. This means Degel HaTorah is now ready to vote with the opposition to dissolve the Knesset. That would force new elections in Israel. Why Netanyahu broke a written promise? Well, he did. He told the Haredi parties this week that he won't pass the draft law this term. That's the law that protects yeshiva bochurim from being drafted into the army. Passing that law was a signed condition on the original coalition deal. During the meeting, the Rosh Hashiva handed the politicians a letter. In it, he wrote that you cannot believe a single word that Netanyahu says, and that the whole idea of a right-wing camp has no meaning for the Haredi parties from today onward. Netanyahu is also having a separate bad week. He just finished his cross-examination in the corruption trial known as Case 4000, also called the Bezek Wallah affair. Today's final hearing was actually cut short. Netanyahu left the courtroom only 30 minutes in for an urgent security call at the Kiryat, Israel's military headquarters. That court accepted his defense team's request to shorten the hearing for, quote, urgent security diplomatic matters. His lawyers said the prosecution completely failed to prove a quid pro quo, a corrupt trade of favors, in other words. The next trial, Case 2000, starts shortly after. But in Israel itself, the rabbinical court, the Bezdin, is in chaos. What happened? Microsoft just deleted every official email account for the rabbinical courts there. That's over an unpaid bill of about 700,000 shekels that they owe. Thousands of divorce cases are now stuck. Judges and clerks have no access to the documents, data, or daily correspondence. In a separate Microsoft Israel story, the head of Microsoft's in Israel, Alon Chaimovich, was just fired. The company ran an internal investigation into how the Israeli military uses its technology after claims that the IDF was using Microsoft's cloud system to spy on Palestinians. When the investigation ended, Chaimovich was basically out. A quick update on a story we told you about, Trump's Jewish American Heritage event, which is scheduled for, 2 days from now, Friday afternoon. The one running right up against Shabbos. Now, Orthodox frum Jewish guests on the invitation list, including representatives from Tzedek and the Banon Shel Kadoshim Reb Ezra Friedlander, are warning openly that the timing could chas v'shalom lead to Shabbos, to Chilul Shabbos among the people attending, which is obviously a sad situation if that's the fact, but the sad situation is that they can't obviously participate. The Orthodox Union has also launched its own program for this coming Shabbos. It's called Shabbos 250. The OU is asking Yidden across America to take part in honoring Americans' 250th birthday over Shabbos. Rabbi Dr. Josh Joseph at the OU said showing thanks is a core Jewish idea, and from America's earlier days, the Jewish community has enjoyed freedom and equal rights here for a very long time, so we owe them an akuras hatov. And not every invitee is planning to obviously show up, as you can imagine. I asked Turks, Avram Yaakov Tekeltob, who I'm going to have a very interesting event with, by a live event. It's going to be streaming here and in many other places very, very soon. I'll share with you the details. I asked him if he would attend the Shabbos 250 event at the White House. His response was, you mean the White House event this Shabbos? He says, I don't think so, I would rather hang out with my family. Those were his words, which is very, very, very strong of him. On the topic, I asked also Shlomi Zions. He didn't yet respond. He was in the middle of a trade show, so he couldn't really answer me. On the topic of walking to shul, Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, one of the leading rabbunim in Israel, just spoke out against people who drive on Shabbos a short distance to shul instead of walking. He called the practice a disgrace to the honor of davening and to shul. Anyone physically able to walk, he said, should do. Sorry, not Shabbos, I made a mistake. He's talking about Mechlal, driving to shul. Driving to shul a short distance, he claims that it's basically a chilul to the idea of davening. If you can walk to shul, go walk. Why would you drive? That's what he was saying. Interesting thing to think about. Magen David Adom in Israel just launched a brand new response unit specifically for mental health emergencies. 2 scams are hitting frum Yidden in Brooklyn right now. In Flatbush, a shady towing scam is hitting Yidden hard, mostly on Shabbos. Scammers patrol the neighborhoods looking for cars parked in front of driveways. When they find one, they tow the car, and even though no homer ever called for a tow truck, then they demand ransom money to return it. Flatbush Shomrim has identified the tow truck company involved and is working with the police right now to basically Punish them. And over in Borough Park, families are finding thousands of dollars missing from their food stamp cards. The stolen benefits belong to shoppers at groceries and bakeries along 13th Avenue. Shomrim and local organizations checked the credit card machines at the affected stores. The machines came back clean, meaning the scam is happening inside the system itself, not at the swiper. Ezelet Miche and Bobov has issued an urgent community alert. Scammers are calling families directly and tricking them into giving away their PIN codes. The organization is telling everyone never share a PIN code over the phone and lock your cards when they're not being used. And another piece of stolen Jewish history just surfaced. Just days after we covered one of the 100,000 paintings or 200,000 paintings the Nazis Hitler stole from our grandparents is now sitting in French museums, as you know, some of them actually. Another stolen masterpiece has been found. It was once owned by a Jewish art collector, Jacques Goudsticker. That's his name, Goudsticker, before the Nazis invaded the Netherlands and stole it from him. It's now been tracked down to the descendants of a Dutch SS collaborator. The anti-Semitism wave is a global issue. It's going global. In Canada, police arrested a 48-year-old man for damaging a menorah, a large menorah in Midtown Toronto. They're calling it a hate crime. In Australia, the man who rammed his car into the gates of the largest shul in Brisbane back in February was just granted bail. In Seattle, a local imam named is being called out for a deeply anti-Semitic statement. What he said is, quote, "The Jews are arrogant. They think they are better than everyone else. They walk on earth thinking everyone else is an animal. Allah will humiliate them on the day of judgment." Well, from his words to God's ears, he's talking about himself. He just mistakenly said Jews. He meant himself. That's what they're doing. Exactly that's what they're doing. In London, the Gershy organization is preparing for Schwarcz. Load report that I saw. Actually, this is an old picture of Brian Gordon, Oliver Shulam, who was a council in Barnet, and he lived in Edgware. I knew him actually very, very well. It's an old picture, but I just want to bring it up because we're talking about London and the police and Shomrim. The Rosh Hakol issued a letter to all Gaburim and Askunim, including scheduling a joint meeting with the police and the Shomrim Safety Patrol, because the meeting is for next Sunday on Rosh Chodesh Sivan at the Kehillah offices. The letter was co-signed by leading Rabbunim of the Besdin, the Sgan Gavad Hagun Reb Shulem Friedman Shlita, and the Nusian Roish Hadayunim Hagun Reb Yosef Padva Shlita, and the Rav of Kahaladas Yisroel Hagun Reb Aaron David Dunner. Now in America, inflation came in very hot. In April, consumer price index rose to 0.6%. That pushed the annual inflation rate to 3.8%. The biggest driver was fuel, obviously. Gas prices spikes accounted for more than 40% of the entire jump in inflation last month. The national average for diesel jumped 60% over the past year. It's now $5.66 a gallon, closing in an all-time high of $5.82, basically. In response, Trump is proposing a pause on the federal gas tax. That's going to lower it to 18 cents. He can't do it alone. Congress would have to approve it. For context, worldwide oil production has fallen to more than 30% because of the war. Saudi Arabia says its own oil pumping has dropped to the lowest level since 1990. Breaking news from Capitol Hill. The Senate is voting right now on Kevin Warsh to become the new chairman of the Federal Reserve, or voted already. Well, the Federal Reserve Chair is one of the most powerful jobs in America. The Federal Chair, well, to replace Mr. Too Late, right? You know him, the one Trump called, is the person who decides whether to raise or lower the interest rates for the entire country. That means how much your mortgage costs, how much your credit card debt costs, how much your banks pay you on your savings. If confirmed, Warsh will replace Jerome Powell, who has held the job since 2018. Also from Washington, Vice President J.D. Vance announced a federal versus state. Basically, he announced a major federal versus state showdown today. The federal government is freezing $1.3 billion in Medicaid payments to California. Vance said, the reason is simple, quote, "The state of California has not taken fraud very seriously," he says. The federal government is also sending letters to every state Medicaid program in all 50 states. The letters warn states to prove that they are aggressively prosecuting fraud or they'll lose their funding too, he says. Vance's warning, quote, "We are going to turn off the money." And here is one more from Trump. The president is reportedly thinking about issuing 250 pardons to mark America's 250th birthday. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. 250 people are going to be set free now. The White House is Is he including Obama? I'm joking. The White House is considering either June 14th or the 4th of July as of the date to do this, basically. The Boston freeway shooter, Tyler Brown, we told you about him yesterday, has now officially been charged with multiple crimes, including armed assault with intent to murder. You remember yesterday I told you the story? This is a picture of him running around the street with a gun, like a wild animal. A plane crashed into the ocean about 80 miles off the coast of Melbourne, Florida, a city on the eastern side of the state. The Coast Guard rescued all 11 people on board from the water, Baruch Hashem. Search teams are still looking for the plane itself. An update on the story we covered before. FDA chief Marty Makary, we told you about, might step down. Well, he officially is resigning after 13 months on the job. Trump posted that Kyle Diamantis will take over as acting commissioner. Reporters asked Trump if he fired Makary or asked him to resign. Trump answered, quote, "Well, I don't want to say, but Marty is a great guy. He was having some difficulties." Trump added that Makary is, quote, "a terrific guy, but he's going to go on and lead a good life." Trump also officially endorsed Vice President J.D. Vance as his successor in the 2028 runoff election. He publicly joked about the assassination attempt on his own life. He told a story about Secret Service agents yanking Vance out of his chair to safety. And he called Vance, quote, "a little boy," while the bullets were flying. Democratic mayor apparently was crying because Democratic people go, officials also do that sometimes when they cry, when it's in panic. Democratic Mayor Russ Baraka won re-election in Newark, New Jersey, by the way. And David Venturella is taking over as the new acting director of ICE. People are watching his past ties to the private prison industry. A jaw-dropping clash on Capitol Hill last night between FBI Director Kash Patel and Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen. Well, Van Hollen grilled Patel over reports about his drinking. Patel exploded right back. He accused the senator of drinking with lowlifes and reminded him that Van Hollen's own campaign ranked up a $7,000 bar tab. Steist? Then Patel laid out his record at the FBI. Under his leadership, he says, in less than 2 years, FBI arrests have almost doubled. The world's 10 most wanted criminals are being captured at record speed. The homicide rate has dropped to 20 points. 45,000 violent criminals were arrested last year alone, twice as many as the year before. That means during Biden. 2,450 criminal gangs have been disrupted. That's a 322% jump. And 6,900 missing children have been located, a 144% increase. Patel's punchline: while he's been doing all that, the Democrats complaining about him have spent their time on, quote, equal rights garbage that destroyed American streets and allowed terror into the country. And here is one more from Trump on the related story. Trump went on the radio and called the New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, quote, a nice guy. Is he saying nice as an ice guy? I'm joking. And a nice person. I really like him, he says. The Mamdani administration just lost its push for a major tax hike, obviously, as you can imagine. And one more from Washington. An active CIA whistleblower, someone who leaks information, named James Erdman III, testified under oath before the Senate Homeland Security Committee. He told senators that Dr. Anthony Fauci purposely covered up where the COVID-19 pandemic came from. Erdman III testified that Fauci stopped American intelligence officers from blaming the virus on China, and that Fauci hid the leak from a Chinese laboratory by forcing his way into the top-secret investigation. Now to the world. Russia just fired a massive nuclear-capable missile called the RS-28 SHACHMAT. It's a nuclear-capable missile. Okay. Russian President Vladimir Putin is calling it the most powerful missile in the world. It's an intercontinental ballistic missile built to travel across the globe and strike with a nuclear warhead. Putin says it will officially enter combat service by the end of the year. And on the Ukraine front, right after a short ceasefire ended, Russia launched more than 800 drones at Ukraine in a simple, sweeping daytime attack. At least 6 people were killed. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says Russia is trying to overwhelm Kiev's air defenses. In one 24-hour stretch, Ukrainian forces shot down over 100 explosive drones. The attack was so massive that neighboring Slovakia shut down its border crossing with Ukraine. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is fighting for his political life. 4 cabinet ministers, just resigned after Starmer's Labour Party took a beating in the local elections. Politicians inside his own party are demanding he quit. Starmer is refusing. He told his cabinet they would have to physically drag him out of the office. And he called his main rivals West Streeting, and Angela Rayner to, quote, put up or shut up. In other words, British financial markets are crashing under chaos. If Starmer is replaced before July, the UK will have gone through 7 prime ministers in just 10 years. The changing of the prime ministers. In a separate British political story, Nigel Farage is now facing an official investigation after taking in £5 million financial gift from a cryptocurrency billionaire. Now picture this. We're all used to sitting at a frum play. A play like Epic, SHACHMAT, or Intern, whatever. But this one is mine. It's personal to me. SHACHMAT. The one where I myself had the role of King Henry V, crown and all. Made by Moshe Greenfeld, who designed the costume. The boys and men in the audience remember that play very well, where, the Puritz, what's his name again? The Galach was Chaim Brown, and Ari Abramovich was, I don't know what he was exactly. I don't think he knows what he was, but he was someone who was very important there. But he's always that character that nobody understands why he's there or what he's doing, but he plays a very important role, and it's funny, and everyone wants to know what exactly he's up to until you find out in the end. He was an advisor, so to speak. And so it was an interesting story. For those of you who didn't watch it, you can go on to mostlymusic.com and you can find it there in English and in Yiddish. Why am I advertising it? I'm just very excited about it, this idea. It reminded me today because today, actually, in England, the play was real. There was a real play. Listen to this. King Charles III, an actual king, an actual crown, riding in an actual gold carriage, not designed by Moshe Greenfeld, though he wishes probably to design those costumes. He probably would have been accepted because they're just immaculate. They're just comparably amazing, what he did. Walked into the British House of Lords this morning. He went to deliver the state opening of Parliament speech, which is an amazing, major thing. That's a speech where the King officially tells Parliament what the British government is going to do this year. The whole thing looked like something out of 1,000 years ago, except it was happening in 2026. A country with smartphones and self-driving cars. Wild. And the speech itself was a heavy one. The king spoke for 17 minutes, the longest opening of Parliament speech by a king or queen in 100 years. Well, I guess he didn't beat Trump yet. If Trump would have been king, they would have been sitting there for 3-4 hours. He laid out 37 different bills the government is planning to pass. The king said the world is becoming dangerous and unstable. He used the war in the Middle East as one example. He said Britain will protect its energy, defense, and economy. The government will put, by the way, here you see him delivering the crown. Exactly the same thing we did on SHACHMAT. It was so interesting. Like Ari Abramovich walked up with a crown and delivered it to me as who I acted as King Henry then. An interesting story. Anyway, it's funny to watch. The government will push closer trade. It's only the differences between my crown and his crown is that crown is billions of dollars versus like $10 maybe. No, I'm joking. Like maybe like $100. The government will push closer trade with he says ties with European Union and attack the cost of living. They'll invest big in defense, artificial intelligence, AI, and also technology. And they'll take British steel industry back under government control, they said. They're also promising to build 180,000 government-supported homes. 180,000 government-supported homes by the year 2036, which is another 10 years from now. Outside the building, obviously outside the big palace, protesters from a group called Republic, which wants to get rid of the British monarchy entirely, shouted "Free, free Palestine," which has to come together as the king arrived. And all this royal, this whole royal play was happening while the Prime Minister Keir Starmer was fighting for his political life inside the same building. Stunning timing. Breaking news from Philippines. Shots have been fired inside the Philippine Senate. A standoff broke out as authorities tried to arrest a senator who is wanted by the International Criminal Court, the ICC. That's the world's top war crimes court, the one who wants to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, obviously. The senator was holed up inside the Senate building when gunfire broke out. Australia just released a massive new national budget. The big news for the local Jewish community is a $600 million commitment specifically for Jewish organizations. It is in a response to the recently deadly Bondi terrorist attack. The Executive Council of Australian Jewry welcomed the funding as, quote, a small comfort for those who lost loved ones. A fast-moving wildfire in northern Alberta, Canada, is burning out of control. It's burning just a few kilometers southeast of Whitecourt. Homes are in direct danger. Ash is literally raining down over the region, and people are fleeing their homes. In another story, a terrible tragedy out of Panama. A minibus carrying a group of travelers collided with a regular bus. One Israeli woman was on the bus and was killed, and at the scene, and several other Yidden were also injured and are basically listed in serious and moderate condition. They need a refuah shalema. A quick stop in the technology world. We spoke about Elon Musk in China right now. Well, before that, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman took the witness stand against Elon Musk in federal court. That was yesterday. Now listen to this. Altman dropped 3 bombshells. Musk had demanded a 90% controlling share of OpenAI, wanted to merge it into Tesla, and had, quote, frightening idea to pass control to his own children after his death. Closing arguments will come this Thursday, tomorrow. Anthropic, the American AI company whose Claude program China was accused of using to spy, just got investment offers valuing the company at more than $900 billion. They're growing very fast. Then Google reported the first known case of hackers using artificial intelligence to build a real cyber attack. The AI found a hidden weakness in a computer system. By the time anyone figured out what was happening, the damage was already done. Before we wrap up, one of our listeners called in with a great question. I get many listeners. You can call me at 845-671-1775 and press 5 to leave a message. I will listen to it and I will respond on the show if it makes sense, obviously. He wanted to know what exactly is the laser weapon called the Iron Beam that Israel has invented and been using. Let me break it down. Iron Beam is a brand new Israeli weapon that just became fully operational this year. Instead of firing a missile to shoot down an enemy missile, which is what Iron Dome does right now, right? It costs like thousands of dollars each and every time with a missile shooting at an actual missile, right? Which costs Israel about $50,000 every time, right? It pulls the trigger. Iron Beam shoots a powerful laser beam at the enemy missile or drone. A powerful laser beam, that's all it does, like from a movie. The beam is invisible to the eye, but it's so hot that within a few seconds, the metal of the missile literally melts and the warhead falls apart in midair. The biggest news is the cost. Every Iron Beam shot costs about $2 in electricity. That's it. $2 in electricity. Compare that to $50,000 for an Iron Dome interception. Well, Iran can fire $5,000 drones, and Israel used to have to spend $50,000 to shoot it down. Now, guess what? They can spend $2 with Iron Beam. That math finally flips. Last week was a historic moment. Israel rushed Iron Beam systems to the United Arab Emirates after Iran fired more than 500 missiles and 200 drones at the UAE during the war. Iron Beam, working together with Iron Dome, shot down most of them. It was the first time the laser was used in combat outside of Israel, proving that the technology actually works in a real war. The laser does have limits, though. It only works in clear weather. Clouds, dust, or fog can scatter the beams. You can imagine, it's a light, right? And it can only handle short and medium range targets, not big ballistic missiles yet. But for drones and small rockets, it's a complete game changer. Today is the yahrzeit of Reb Shlomo's villa, a big tzaddik. And I know a story personally that I heard from him. I have to verify this, and I'm trying to look for it. I haven't found it yet. Please, someone help me find me the makar. He says that he sees the generation of Mashiach. That's what he says right before he's passing. Anyway, today is yahrzeit. Light a candle in his name. May Hashem help you all. And before we go, let's not forget Ura. This weekend is the Hashem the Goyrel, and as well Protobite. Protobite. The prizes are behind me, and Protobite's down here. Why? Because A, you can win prizes. B, also Protobite, if you design software, it's literally a prize on its own. 347-354-1237. Call them, mention on Edge, and get yourself a good deal, because you know that the best deal is a good deal. Anyway, I don't know what's going on behind me. Don't look. Just focus on this. The background is causing some issues. But the point is, why as Capital Group? Why as Capital Group? Because Capital Group, they can actually give you a loan that you need to invest in your building. 718-831-2168. Arrive Express is there for you when you need to book yourself a car. 845-622-1111 or 845-254-1111. My friends, may you have a wonderful time, and we'll see each other. May Hashem's Baruch Ezra Mizbuch tomorrow. Sorry about all this, what's going on here. I don't know what you saw, but it's just pictures and videos a little bit messed up at the end. But with that, I'll see you tomorrow.
Your daily report of the news of the last 24 hours, powered by Yiddish24, provided to you by The Click.